Down in October 1962, two of Asia's largest nations, India and China, went to war over some of the most challenging terrain on Earth. But this wasn't just a border conflict. It was a clash of ideologies, visions for the future, and national pride. How did India and China, once neighbors with friendly ties, find themselves locked in a bloody conflict on the world's rooftop? In this video, we'll delve into the complex roots of the 1962 war, exploring how misunderstandings, strategic ambitions, and regional dynamics led to an unforgettable chapter in history. To understand the 1962 war, we must look back to the legacies of British and Qing rule. The British had established the McMahon Line as a boundary between India and Tibet, while the region of Aksai Chin, claimed by India, was historically considered part of Tibet, but held strategic importance for China. When India gained independence in 1947 and China established the People's Republic in 1949, the two nations inherited these complex, unresolved boundaries. The McMahon Line was never officially recognized by China, as it had been drawn unilaterally by the British. For China, this border symbolized a relic of imperialism. For India, however, it marked the official boundary inherited from British India. In the early 1950s, both nations hoped for peaceful relations. India, under Prime Minister Nehru, promoted a vision of peaceful coexistence. In 1954, India formally recognized Chinese sovereignty over Tibet in exchange for peaceful border negotiations. Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, India and China are brothers, became a popular slogan reflecting the spirit of friendship. But despite this friendship, there were major ideological differences. China, under Mao Zedong, was focused on strengthening its own borders, particularly in Tibet, while India promoted non-alignment and peaceful coexistence. These differences would soon become sources of tension. By the late 1950s, both nations' approaches began to harden. India adopted a forward policy, placing military posts in areas it considered its own, even in disputed territories. For Indian leaders, this was about securing the border, but from China's perspective, it was a violation of territory and sovereignty. China, meanwhile, built a strategic road through Aksai Chin, connecting Tibet and Xinjiang, an area it deemed crucial for national security. This road alarmed India, as it lay within territory India claimed as its own. Each side felt threatened, and diplomatic talks stalled as both nations refused to give up territory they considered theirs. In October 1962, border skirmishes turned into a full-scale conflict. Chinese forces launched attacks in both the western sector in Aksai Chin and the eastern sector across the McMahon Line. The war was intense and brief, with troops battling in extreme conditions at altitudes over 14,000 feet. Indian troops, facing logistical challenges and limited preparation for high-altitude warfare, were at a disadvantage. Chinese forces, familiar with the conditions and backed by stronger logistics, advanced swiftly. In just a month, they took control of key positions and declared a ceasefire in November 1962. The sudden end of the conflict left the world stunned, and neither India nor China had anticipated how quickly it would end. The international community was taken by surprise. Global powers, particularly the United States and the Soviet Union, were distracted by the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was unfolding at the same time. Both superpowers were concerned about maintaining influence in Asia, but neither wanted to directly intervene. India received symbolic support from the West, but little material help during the actual conflict. China, wary of potential escalation, quickly declared victory and pulled back from many of the areas it had captured. The war had left both countries with unresolved disputes and a lingering sense of mistrust. Although the war lasted only a month, it left deep scars. The border remained tense, with both nations investing heavily in border security in the decades that followed. Diplomatic talks were resumed, and by the 1990s, India and China made efforts to stabilize relations through agreements aimed at maintaining peace. But despite these efforts, the core issues of the 1962 war remain unresolved. Both countries continue to claim disputed territories, and periodic clashes and standoffs are reminders that this chapter is not entirely closed. The 1962 war between India and China was not just a battle over land, it was a wake-up call about the complexity of historical borders, the risks of miscommunication, and the dangers of unaddressed grievances. As both countries rise as global powers, their relationship continues to shape regional stability in Asia. The question remains, can two powerful neighbors find a path to lasting peace? Or will old disputes continue to shape the future? The 1962 war stands as a reminder that borders may be drawn, but the lines of trust take much longer to build. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. History holds many lessons, and understanding them helps us shape a better future.